Hey there, my fellow lunatics, and welcome to Dakon's Madhouse. Alright, everyone. Today we are doing a tier list of all of the melee weapons in the game. But before we start, here's a quick little list of all the important criteria that I'm going to be using for judging. Number 1. All of the items are at their starting level. There are no item level upgrades. None of the items are reinforced. I have noticed that at lower levels, a lot of people tend not to reinforce their items, so I'm going to assume that you don't have the resources, or you just keep forgetting to reinforce. Number 3, I take into account at what point in the game the item is normally going to be found. So for example, the Copper Sword is more useful in the early game than in the late game, so I'm rating things with this kind of consideration in mind. Number 4. Different playstyles can alter the ranking of various weapons for different people. Now, I'm going to try to stay neutral and take all these different playstyles into account, but I must admit I have a bit of a bias toward fast attack speed weapons that hit more often than single shot attacks that do more damage in a single blow. I'm going to do my best not to let that get the better of me though. With that out of the way, let's take a quick look at the rating system in general and what each tier means. Starting with the S tier. This is the top tier. These are going to be our super versatile items, best of the best, things that are used in multiple builds. A tier, those are going to be excellent items. Top tier for at least one build, and often versatile, but not necessarily the best of the best. B tier are strong items that you really aren't going to complain about, but they have limited use or are eventually outclassed by other items. C tier, these items are fine. You can't go wrong with them, but you will eventually replace them, or you are going to replace them pretty quickly. D tier, maybe these items have a little bit of a niche use, but otherwise they're really not that useful or worthwhile. And F tier, the item is trash, it's not any good, don't bother using it. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with ranking all of the weapons. Starting off with the Anchor Axe. Now, this item you get in the Sunken Sea. It's kind of a mid-game item. I'm going to go ahead and place this guy into A tier. It's a strong axe, it's good against a lot of enemies, and knockback defense doesn't hurt because in the Sunken Sea, you're going to need a little bit of defense. Next, we've got the Atlantean Worm Sword. Now, this guy I'm going to go ahead and throw into B tier. It's a good sword, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty much designed for bosses. So it's just not quite as versatile, which is why it doesn't get to go into A tier. Next, we've got the Battle Axe. And this one is going right into S tier. It's our first S tier item. It is hands down the best pre-wall melee weapon in the game. It is strong, it's fast enough, it can handle enemies, it can handle bosses. It is a wonderful, wonderful pre-wall weapon and is definitely the kind of thing you're going to want to get your hands on. And then, of course, we're going to follow that up with the Broken Handle, which goes right into D tier. It's just not that good. I mean, the Scarlet Sword is frankly better in every way and is easier to get your hands on. So when you're at the point that you can get the Broken Handle, just use the Scarlet Sword instead. All right, so next we've got the Copper Sword, and I'm going to put this guy right into C tier. It is the first good weapon that you're going to be able to craft, and it's a fine weapon, but you are going to replace it very quickly. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a good early game item. And then we have the Crystal Shard Club, and this one I am putting into D tier. It's got good damage, but it's a bit gimmicky. Now, if you like the gimmick, go ahead and use it, but frankly, I think there's better weapons out there by the time you get your hands on this thing. The Galaxite Dagger is our next weapon, and this one, oh man, this one is definitely an S tier weapon. It is, in my opinion, one of the best endgame melee weapons. It's fast, it has high damage, it's got a great bonus effect, it's a very, very good weapon. Next up on the chopping block, haha, it is the Galaxite Sword. Now this is a pretty good sword, but I am putting it into C tier. It's solid, but the Galaxite Dagger is better in pretty much every way, and you get them both at the same time. So why grab the sword when you can get the dagger? The Hunting Spear is next, and the Hunting Spear is going into B tier. It is a really good weapon. It is very useful in tight corridors, and its reach is one of the better reach items at this point in the game. So it is definitely worth having. The Iron Halberd also is a really good item, and I'm going to put it into B tier as well. Frankly, if you want to use spears, the Iron Halberd is your best pre-wall spear. It's really good. Now we haven't had a lot of A tier items, so we might as well change that and put the Iron Sword straight into A tier. It is the best sword in the early game, and it is one of my favorite early game weapons. It is fast, it is versatile, and it is easy to craft. It is the first weapon that I actively push toward whenever I play a new game. The Larva Spike Club. This guy, unfortunately, looks cool. On paper, it seems like it would be cool, but it's not cool. And it's going into D tier. Really, by the time that you can make the Larva Spike Club, you're going to have iron. And at that point, you're going to have the Iron Sword or something else. So there's just really no point in using this club. When it comes to raw damage, the Lava Battle Axe is the highest, and that is one of the reasons why it is going into A tier, because it is versatile and it does have burn damage added on top of it. Now, if you are a burn build, this will be an S tier item. It's a must-have, but if you're not a burn build, it's not quite as important, and since burn is not the most popular build, I'm dropping it down to A tier as a result. Next, we've got the Octarine Axe, and this one is going right down into D tier. Look, it's fine, really, but the Anchor Axe is better in every way. Honestly, the only advantage that the Octarine Axe has over any of the other late game axes is that it's craftable. Otherwise, if you can get your hands on the Anchor Axe or the Lava Axe, frankly, upgrade the Battle Axe instead, and you're going to be in better shape than using the Octarine Axe. The Octarine Sword is just barely better. I'm putting it in C tier. I mean, it's good, but by the time you craft it, you're likely going to have found a better melee weapon. Or you may have gone into the desert, which is what I would do, and get my hands on some Galaxite and make a Galaxite Dagger so that I can skip straight past the Octarine in the first place. The Poisonous Sickle. Ooh boy, this one is another S tier item. This is one of the best weapons in the game. You get it early, you're going to use it forever. Especially if you have a poison build or you go down on the gardening tree and take that one little poison stat, that one is going to make this sickle super helpful. All right, we have come to the Prehistoric Crystal Spear, and this one is also going into S tier. This is the best spear in the game. Its bonus damage honestly makes it one of the best endgame weapons as well in general. It is just excellent. It's got good reach, it's got an excellent secondary ability, it handles bosses, it handles mobs. It's a great weapon. The Richual Dagger. This one may surprise you, but I am also putting this one into S tier. It is, in my opinion, one of the best pre-wall weapons. However, it lacks reach, and because during that time period you have very little hit points, I do not recommend this weapon for beginners. Definitely only for players who are good at avoiding damage while getting in really close from melee. But if you can, this dagger is fast and it is powerful. The Runesong, the only legendary melee item in the game. The item that you have to search for, struggle for, and practically bleed, wasting so much time to get. What would I rank this? Well, guys, this is the first F tier item that I'm putting in. The Runesong is just not worth it. At the point that you can get this item in the game, if you are very lucky, then sure, maybe you can get it early enough that you're only doing Scarlet, and at that point, yeah, it's going to be better than anything you've got, but its secondary abilities really aren't all that great. Its damage is not all that powerful, especially considering how much hell you have to go through to get it. I really only recommend it if you're trying to get the achievement. Up next, we've got the Rusty Dagger, and I'm going to put this one into C tier. While it is an excellent weapon, just like I said about the Richual Dagger during the early game, you lack hit points, and getting in that close is not easy. It is definitely an expert level weapon, and that's why I put this one into C tier, because it's just really hard to use, especially right at the point that you get it, which is pretty much right at the beginning of the game. The Scarlet Dagger, I am going to actually put into B tier, because by this point in the game, you should have a little bit more hit points. It should be a little bit easier to survive when you're close in melee, and so the Scarlet Dagger becomes a much more viable weapon and something that can actually carry you into the late game till you get your hands on Galaxite. The Scarlet Sword, this one is going into A tier. It is a huge upgrade from right after the wall goes down, and it is an easy upgrade to make. I highly recommend it, as it is a very worthwhile weapon. Up next, we have got the Slime Sword, and I'm going to put this one into D tier. Honestly, the Iron Sword is a better weapon, and it's easier to make, so just do that instead. And then we have the Slippery Slime Sword, and this one is going right into F tier to hang out with the Runesong. I do not understand the point of Slippery. I don't know if I ever will, and I just hate this sword. However, the Solarite Sword is going to go into C tier. It is a decent weapon. It doesn't suck. And, you know, it's solid. If you don't have better, go ahead and craft it and use it. But I personally think that odds are by the time you're getting Solarite, unless you grab a lot of it early on in the wilderness area, then you're probably going to already have better. The Tentacle Whip I'm also throwing into C tier. There's really nothing great about it. It just does damage, but it has good reach. So if you're having trouble staying alive and you really wish you had the reach of a ranged weapon, then grab the Tentacle Whip, because it pretty much has that really long reach. And now we're going to go into a series of bad weapons. We have got the Tin Axe, which is going into D tier. It's just not all that great. I mean, if you replace your Copper Sword with the Tin Axe, then yeah, it's good. But you're going to really quickly replace it with something better. Really, the only time that the tin weapons have any value is if you're replacing from copper to tin. But I think you're just as likely to go from copper to iron. The Tin Dagger, I'm putting it, frankly, into F tier, because while it's really not all that great, it's just not all that great. You know, there's nothing more to it. It has no reach. It has no damage. It has no bonuses. It's just not all that good. The Tin Sword, this one is the only one that has any real value. I'd put this one into C tier just because, you know, like I said a minute ago, you're going to replace probably the Copper Sword with the Tin Sword, and that's fine. The Wooden Sword I'm also putting into D tier because it's the starter weapon. You're only going to use it until you get your hands on enough copper to make a copper sword. So you're replacing it quick. It does low damage. It has no bonuses. It's just there to get you through the first few kills. And that wraps everything up for today's episode. If you enjoyed yourself, please be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you're interested in watching my videos regularly. And if you feel like adding some extra support to the channel, you can always join our Patreon or become a YouTube member. There are links in the description. Thanks again for watching. You're all wonderful, and until next time, stay crazy.